Are live on Facebook for the January 12th first official council meeting of 2021.
All right. Adequate notice of this meeting, as required by the Open Public Meetings Act, was provided through the posting, mailing, and filing of the annual notice of regularly scheduled meetings of the Town Council on December 11, 2019. A notice was on that date posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, provided to the Westfield Leader and the Star Ledger, and filed with the clerk of the town of Westfield. Mrs. Rowley, may I have a roll call?
Mayor Brindle.
Here.
Council members Habgood, Parmalee.
Here.
LaGrippo.
Here.
Katz.
Here.
Mackey.
Here.
Contract.
Here.
Dardia.
Here.
Boyce.
Here.
So thank you. Can you please join me for a salute to the flag? Got mine. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation,
under
God,
indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all. So I mentioned to Jim that I wanted to go first tonight because I've been giving a lot of thought to what happened in the Capitol last week, and it felt very poignant that we say the Pledge of Allegiance every council meeting, whether we're in person or not, in light of, and I think we often, like so many kids in school, we just think and go through the motions without really thinking about what it means. So I've just been giving a lot of thought, and it just seems as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, it's really important to reflect on what that sacred pledge really means in light of the horrific events of last week, when the Capitol was overrun by a group of domestic terrorists who called themselves patriots. Every American should be appalled at the desecration of our flag and their feeble but deadly attempt to upend our democracy. I am particularly heartbroken for every service member and veteran who has proudly served defending our flag, and particularly those that never came home, and the American values and ideals it represents to have to bear witness to this assault on our democracy. This moment in history is one that will live far beyond us, and it shows the deep divides that exist in this era of American democracy. It is my fervent hope that our country can begin to come together and heal in the weeks and the months ahead. My biggest wish, above all else, is that we can set that tone here in our own community and recommit ourselves to living up to the American ideals of freedom and tolerance. I pledge to do my part as the leader of this governing body. I know we have differences, and we always will, but we cannot allow them to destroy our civility and erase our commonalities. Westfield has always prided itself on a very strong sense of community, perhaps never more so than the last year amidst this pandemic. And I know that sense of community will continue to see us through. We are and we will always be one nation under God. So with those comments, Jim, I'm going to flip it to you, and then I'll go back and give the latest COVID update.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your comments. Some quick updates for the council and the public. Just an update on COVID impacts to the staff, which continue. As of today, we have one employee in the building department quarantining pending test results. We have 3 employees in the police department, 2 positive cases and 1 quarantining due to exposure. We have 1 person in the tax collection office who's quarantining, and 1 in the court office quarantining, both pending tests. So again, it's, every day, every week it changes. Luckily, it's been very manageable, and no one who's either gotten the virus and or had a quarantine has been very sick, which is good news. Health Officer Megan Avalone has been doing a great job for us, continuing to contact trace for all employee cases, in addition to her normal duties for the public, and giving us guidance on testing, quarantining protocols, and now vaccination information. And so just FYI for everybody that police, fire, and health department employees have begun getting the vaccinations. as they're all in the 1A group for New Jersey. And that's proceeding. And so that's good news. So the vaccination process and our pathway out of this has begun, which is great. So, so that's it on COVID for the staff. 3 other quick updates. Recycling. Just want to thank the residents of the town for adapting to our new schedule. The new schedule started last week. New vendor, new schedule, new days of pickup, and very few issues. And that's a credit to not only the new vendor. I think part of it's the information we share with the public too on many different fronts, but also the public paying attention and following the new rules. So again, just a reminder, what's changed is we have a new vendor, we have a new schedule. We're doing 10 zones versus the 4 zones. So the vendor's here every single day, 5 days a week. Last week was the 5 zones on the north side. This week is the 5 zones on the south side. The one thing we've heard, and we've gotten information out, but this vendor obviously is eager. So they're coming right on time, early. So I know last Friday when I was picked up, the old contractor used to come by my house maybe 10 or 11 o'clock in the late morning. They were there at, I think, 8 o'clock on Friday morning. So I reminded my neighbor and myself, ran out of the house, put our stuff out, got it collected. But again, once you get used to their new schedule, it'll work. But so like, you know, in my case, I used to be picked up on Mondays. Now I'm picked up on Fridays, but it'll be every other week. So that's what's changed. What's not changed is every other week, and 1s and 2s. And reminder that very shortly, the next few weeks, we'll have a new bin at our conservation center to accept number 5s only. We're doing a pilot program, which we announced in December. So that will happen soon. We'll get information out. So just a reminder again, we did saturate the marketplace here with mail brochure to every home, every property, website information for the recycling, town updates, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We even had local press involved and the message board signs by the police to make sure everyone got the word. And it seems like most everybody did. So I just want to thank the public and thank the council for the support and thank the new vendor so far. We're in week 2, but seems to be going rather well. Leaf collection, we have completed our 3rd pass. That was done, I believe, yesterday. So there are still some remnant piles out there that have been left, and because of either branches, mums, things that were not allowed to be left in there, those homeowners have been notified. And if people see things, they can call Public Works. Right now, the street sweepers will begin to go around town as weather permits. Street sweepers have a hard time operating in very, very cold weather because they use water, but we'll do as much as we can. And one last thing is, now that leaf season is completed from the pickup of the street, Public Works will now move on to go to the parks and the common areas in town to pick up leaves that on property we own. And that will start working this week. And also frees up some of our crews to do other things now. So today we just started aerating fields at Memorial and Tamaulipas. The fields crew was able to get out there. The weather is cooperating pretty well to do that. So we did that today, started that today. So the good news is the leaf collection program on the street is mostly done, and we can now be freed up to do other things, which is great. And lastly, Sycamore Playground. For those of you who remember, we finished the installation. The playground is open. Spoke to the new chairwoman of the Recreation Commission yesterday with the director and assistant director. The commission will be looking to plan a ribbon cutting with the council at some point very soon. And separate from that, the plans for the Terry DeFalco Memorial are still being worked on, and that'll happen sometime likely in the spring. But all good news, and that's my update, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I just want to give everybody a bit of information and update on COVID. This will serve as my, COVID update for this week until Friday. On a statewide basis, the COVID rate of transmission declined slightly for the first time in a week to 1.08, but hospitalizations rose for the 3rd consecutive day. The 7-day average for daily positive tests in New Jersey is up 18% from a week ago and 7% from a month ago, when the state was witnessing an increase in cases after Thanksgiving. The governor warned that the impact of indoor Christmas and New Year's Eve gatherings will continue to be seen in the coming days. The most recent positivity report that we have is on Thursday, and it's for tests administered statewide. It was 11.32%. It has been 10% or higher since December 22nd. More locally, COVID-related hospitalizations at Overlook are up approximately 11% since the beginning of January. Thankfully, they have not climbed back to the mid-December levels. Here in Westfield, the total number of cases reported to date by the Department of Health is 1,260 as of January 6th. As I shared in Friday's update, the first week of January unfortunately brought the highest number of weekly cases ever at 137 since the start of this pandemic. I will continue to report the Department of Health numbers every Friday and statewide numbers as well. But you know, it's as bad as it's ever been, and we're hoping that there's some relief in sight, and that is coming in the on the vaccination front. New Jersey has received 651,000 doses of the vaccine. 233,555 have been administered. 212,000 of those are first doses. Currently, only healthcare workers, people who live in congregate settings, and police and fire professionals are eligible to receive shots in New Jersey. The New Jersey Department of Health anticipates the vaccine should be available for the general public by April or May, with the hope of vaccinating 70% of adult residents by the end of May. You can go to covid19.nj.gov/vaccine. Definitely, there's a link to pre-register. I've done it. I know everybody else has. And I have gotten lots of questions from residents or concerns about, like, you know, why isn't there a vaccination place in Westfield, and why aren't we using the Armory and so forth? And this, the vaccination plan is being driven by the county. And so you've probably seen some of the locations. I think the ShopRite and Clark and some other local pharmacies and so forth. But these decisions are all being driven by the state and county, and not so much from the municipalities. So, but hopefully they'll be pretty commonplace in lots of places in the very near future. Just a few reminders: first quarter property taxes are due on February 1st. Once again, you can use the drop box at Town Hall, which is, I think everybody's pretty accustomed to it. And the last date to pay without penalty is February 10th. I do want to remind everybody, you know, Martin Luther King Day is next week. Please consider participating in the 3rd annual Mlk Day of Service. We typically assemble kits for when you're with veterans for a variety of groups. This year, the group, we can't do the traditional gather to assemble to put the kits together because of COVID, but we are asking residents if they can donate cold weather packs, and they're going to those that are experiencing homelessness through Bridges Outreach. If you can, place hand warmers, foot warmers, lip balm, new socks, and a blanket in a plastic bag, and place in the drop-off bin in the police department entryway between now and January 22nd. And all details can be found on the MLK Day Westfield on Facebook. So please consider donating one of these warming kits if you can. Next Tuesday at approximately 5 o'clock, which is January 19th, we plan to honor those we lost to COVID as part of a broader nationwide moment of remembrance, which is being planned in collaboration with our local ministerium. I do want to thank those in the community who have reached out to provide names of family members lost to the virus. We're not able to get that information from the health department for privacy concerns. So please, if you can, provide the names of a loved one you may have lost, and we'll incorporate into the remembrance ceremony. And you can also email at covid19@westfieldnj.gov. And we'll be finalizing the details of the service, which will be live streamed to the town. It's going to be a small gathering of a few people, but we encourage most people to participate virtually. And just in closing, further comment on where I started, I do want to let you know that I, like many of you, do remain deeply concerned over the potential for more unrest in the coming days. And certainly you all read the paper like I do as a transition of power in our country approaches. And here at home, and I know we have Chief Badalora on the Zoom call, but you can be assured that he has been in constant communication with his law enforcement counterparts and colleagues across New Jersey. So there are currently no specific threats to our area. I know that Chief Badalora and the extraordinary team in our department will operate from a position of preparedness as they continue to monitor the situation. So I do want to thank all of you, as always, for your participation and your engagement. I, wish all best wishes and God bless President-elect Biden and the incoming administration and our great country. We have a lot of work to do, but I do really believe that we have brighter days ahead. So now on to tonight's agenda. And Chief Badalora, I don't know if you have any further comments on anything I mentioned that you want to comment on.
No, Mayor, you were very accurate. I am constantly receiving information from a variety of sources, from the State Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness, from the State Police, the Regional Operations Intelligence Center, from our County Prosecutor's Office, the Risk Mitigation Unit. I am filtering all of that information out to appropriate persons. At this time, you are correct. There are no threats. We fortunately at this time don't have any congressmen with offices or homes in Westfield. So we are watching very carefully what will develop this weekend at the State House. But at this time, there are no threats towards any local assets.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. So moving on, we'll have some appointments to make this evening. And I would like to propose the following appointments to the Mental Health Council. Thomas Fowler, serving in the resident capacity for a term ending December 31st, 2022. And Gina Tutino, who is also a resident for a term ending December 31st, 2023. May I have a motion to accept these appointments?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is carried. And I think now we have a presentation, right, Jim?
Yes, Bob Chilton, are you there? Let's get this up and running here.
He's on mute or he's dark.
Yeah, no, I'm just, Bob, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Great.
Good. So I just want to just a quick update again. So introduction for Bob. So Bob Chilton is here on behalf of Gable Associates, the firm we hired to help guide us through a government energy aggregation program. So we've asked Bob to come on. The program is already underway. We discussed it last year, if you remember. Just thought it'd be appropriate to give an update tonight where things are and what's up next in this program. So I'll turn it over to Bob.
Right. Thanks, Jim, and good evening, everyone. So yeah, just a quick update. This has been in the works and under development for several months now. The most recent development in the process of putting the program together was a little over a month ago when we submitted draft bidding documents to the Board of Public Utilities and Division of Rate Counsel for their review. This is essentially the request for proposals and then the form of contract. This is a step required in the process in the BPU's rules. So those documents were submitted about a month ago. We're now in a position to release the RFP and to actually start the competitive solicitation process. So we have an ad that was placed in the paper that will appear tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll be able to release the RFP and then start the solicitation process to attract BPU licensed suppliers to submit offers to the town for electric power supply for residents of the town. And the bid specifications that we're putting out specify that the renewable energy content of that power supply that we're asking for proposals on would be roughly a little less than twice the renewable energy content of what is provided by PSC&G. Just to put that in context, the current state requirement is that power supply provided by PSC&G and other suppliers must have at least 23.5% renewable energy. We are asking for a product that has 20% additional, so that would be a total of 43.5% renewable energy, so nearly half the renewable energy content. We'll be seeking proposals for that. The process is a two-stage process. The stage one is the qualification stage, where we ask suppliers to submit their prior experience with this type of a program, a residential program, provide all their various legal documents that are required for the bidding process. Those are vetted, and then ultimately pricing proposals will be submitted on February 9th, and that date coincides with a town council meeting. So the way it works and in the energy world, things move pretty quick. Energy markets are changing all the time. So we really need to make a contract award on the same evening that bids are submitted. So bids will be submitted on with a deadline of noon on the 9th of February. We would then bring those results to the governing body for discussion and decision that evening, whether or not to award a contract. We will be providing reports several days before bid day, just to sort of give you an overview of the ratings of the qualifications of the suppliers that have been qualified, the benchmarking that we will use to evaluate the bids as compared to the PSE&G tariff. So when we have the bids come in, we will assess those bids as compared to where we see the PSE&G tariff falling. And obviously the goal is to obtain a contract that has power supply with significantly higher renewable energy content at a price that is lower than what PSE&G is charging for their power supply, which has less renewable content. So we're looking for and hoping for a win-win. But in the end, those bids are up to your final discretion as to whether or not you believe that the contract is beneficial enough to warrant an award. And if you deem so, we would move forward with a contract award and then start a process which would ensue over the next 3 months or so, which would include a mailing, a notification mailing to residents, and then a public information session, information being provided on the contract, a 30-day opt-out period, and then ultimately the ultimate goal would be for the contract to start in May, with May meter reads May of 2021. But again, that is all contingent upon the bids coming back at a price that you deem to be acceptable. If there's the contracts do not come in with a favorable enough price, then it is certainly within your discretion to not award a contract, and we'd sort of be status quo, pending perhaps another venture in the future for a rebid. So that's I guess a good rundown of sort of where we are in the process and what the next steps might be. And obviously, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Bob, Councilman LaGrippo here. Real quick, what safeguards are in place? I know Glen Rock went through a debacle with the residents there. Could you elaborate on what happened there?
Well, in Glen Rock, I think it's fair to say the contract wound up coming in. One of the issues is the PSE&G tariff rate. While they have a posted tariff rate that's reasonably predictable and reasonably stable, they have other factors that they apply on a monthly basis. So the price to compare on a PSE&G bill will vary from month to month, sometimes significantly, which can cause some confusion. And that's just an unfortunate happenstance of how PSE&G posts the monthly price on customers' bills. So in that case, I think Glen Rock, early on, put the program out there as something that would, save a significant amount of money for residents. In addition to the renewable energy content, I think over the life of the contract, there were ebbs and flows of the PSE&G rate. Over the life of the contract, I think folks saved a few dollars, certainly not a lot of money. In the end, I think it was still a reasonably favorable story of power supply that had much higher renewable energy content at a price that came in on average about equal to the PSE&G price. But I think there were perhaps some unrealistic expectations in terms of how the program was originally rolled out when the contract was first awarded. So I think folks did not necessarily see the level of savings that they were expecting. So I think that led to some of the some of the turmoil, if you will, with some residents sort of feeling that they did not see what they were expecting to see. So, there's two things there. One is to, be very transparent in terms of how the contract price, if contract awards are made, how that price compares to the PSE&G rate, how the PSE&G rate may vary over time. And then, just to create appropriate and realistic expectations as to, in the end, what the level of savings will be. That really is, I think, the key takeaway from the Glen Rock experience.
Right. What did you say the take rate is in Glen Rock right now?
I'm sorry, could you repeat, please? I didn't catch all that.
What's the percentage of residents that are on the plan? The
Okay.
50%? 60%?
Right. So their contract for the first round of their program just came to an end in December. So right now they're in between contracts. But I would say over the life of that contract, the original participation rate was probably around 70%, and then it gradually sort of ramped down to about 50% by the end. I will tell you that a gradual attrition rate once the contract starts is fairly normal, because what happens is as folks move and their accounts are closed out, they automatically are removed from the program, and then the new folks moving into the home are not automatically enrolled. So it's very typical to see an attrition rate. I would say their initial opt-out rate, where they started with 70%, is higher than typical. The attrition rate through the remainder of the 18 months of the contract was fairly typical. Usually averages about 1% to 2% per month, just because of the turnover of accounts and whatnot.
Okay, cool. And can you just go real quick? It's still an opt-out program, right?
It is. That is the way the program is designed under state law and BPU rules. And frankly, the rules and the law are written in reflection of the realities of the marketplace, where an opt-out program really is the only viable way these programs can create an attractive product in the marketplace. It started out as an opt-in. The original law for energy aggregation that was passed in 1999 was an opt-in program, and it was completely unsuccessful. So the legislature actually changed the law in 2003 to change it to an opt-out. So that is the way it is. It is currently set up under state rules, and really it's the only viable way to do it in the marketplace.
Right. So you'll do outreach. So people that want to remain with PSE&G, because the town so far hasn't done a great job in communicating to residents that if they want to remain with PSE&G, they're going to have to take that step to remain with PSE&G.
So the way it works is, if there's a contract award, there's a mailing that goes out to all eligible residents. That mailing is first, again, like our RFP, it's submitted to the BPU for their review to make sure it meets their specifications. And that mailing then goes out to every resident, explaining the contract, the various essential terms of the deal, and then the various mechanisms for folks that can opt out if they so choose, be it by returning a postage paid card that's in the mailing, by internet, by telephone, or by email. So there are a number of ways, try to make it as easy as possible to opt out. That information will also we'll provide some materials that can be posted up on the town's website. And we'll also have a public information session. Traditionally, those were held sort of in town hall, a public meeting. Obviously, in the world we live in now with COVID, those have been conducted through a similar forum like this. It would be a Zoom-based program where folks can just log in, and we give a presentation explaining the program, explaining how folks can opt out if they don't want to be in the program. And that's done about halfway through the opt-out period. So we try to make opt-out as easy as possible for those folks who just simply don't want to participate.
Yeah, Robert, I used to run the program at the BPU, so I do know for older residents, it becomes problematic, especially during COVID. I did a lot of outreach at senior citizen meetings, but not all seniors have as easy as opt out, because I know a lot from experience are going to want to remain with PSE&G.
Right, and we find that's really, I think, where our experience has been. The enclosure in the mailing of that postage paid card that folks can just sign, that tends to be used more prevalently, as you alluded to, by seniors who are perhaps less either less adept at technology or simply don't have the means at their fingertips. So, while that's a relatively low tech, option for opting out, we do find a lot of seniors just feel more comfortable doing that.
Right. Just as long as the residents know it's an opt-out program.
Right. Yeah, that'll be made very clear. And also, I should add, there is an initial 30-day opt-out period at the beginning before the program starts. But the way the terms are written, folks can opt out anytime they want, throughout the contract without penalty. So if someone just doesn't pay attention and doesn't see the mailing, if they notice on the first month of the contract that they're on with a third-party supplier and don't wish to be, they can opt out at that time. So there's always an open-ended opportunity to do.
All right. We used to leverage a lot of the various towns in the vicinity, different consortiums. Has Westfield explored partnering up with any neighboring towns?
I believe there was some exploration of that. It sometimes can be problematic if towns are on the same schedule. There are pros and cons, right? I mean, it can add more purchasing power, but also it can slow you down if towns are on different schedules for adopting ordinances and getting comfortable with the whole process. And also sometimes towns may not agree on the exact terms and conditions as far as the exact renewable energy content, things like that. So there are definitely pros and cons, and I believe it was explored, but I think ultimately it was determined that it would be best to move ahead solo at this point. And I will tell you that the size of Westfield is certainly more than large enough to get the economies you need to get a favorable market price if market conditions are favorable. Certainly you're certainly a large enough town.
Yeah, I mean, I can just quickly jump in just to remind residents very briefly. The goal here is to help residents save money by aggregating all of our demand for residential electricity and increase sustainable sourcing. So it's a double benefit, and I think those are the objectives that we'll use. This is a shared responsibility of a shared recommendation of the Public Works Committee as well as the Green Team. So those are really the criteria to judge these bids. We did look at, should we go alone or should we partner, and based off of the size of Westfield and just with COVID and the ease of moving forward solo, that was the recommendation, hence why we did the ordinance work last year. So we're looking forward to the results of the bids, and I appreciate Gable moving this forward so quickly. We want to take advantage of opportunities in the market. And listen, if the bids don't come back favorable, if we can't deliver on those two criteria, then we will not accept the bids, or the recommendation will be not to accept the bids, and we may rebid down the road. I will say that Glenrock, their first bids were unsuccessful, and they rebid a year later, which was successful. So that happens, and that may happen in this case. So we'll see what happens.
Glenrock, David, I think they were promised the rate below the PSE&G rate, and then when the program rolled out.
I understand, Mark. Their first bidding failed, and then they had promised to go through and it failed. They rebid a year later, and it was successful.
So it sounds like there'll be, once the bids come in, there's going to be additional opportunity for discussion. So thank you so much, Mr. Chilton, for being here today, and we look forward to seeing what the bids bring back.
You're very welcome. Nice to see everyone, and we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
So moving on, may I have a motion to approve the minutes from the Town Council Executive Session and regular meeting of December 8, 2020, and the organizational meeting of January 5th, 2021?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is carried. Mrs. Rowley, do we have any petitions or communications?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Now it's time for open discussion by citizens. Please virtually raise your hand to make your comment on any subject on which we have jurisdiction, and be sure to state your name and address for the record.
Mayor, this is Tom Jardine. I just want to note for you and for Mr. Gilday, there's an individual, Andrew O'Connor, who has his hand raised. This is an individual that resides in the state of Colorado. So pursuant to section 2-66 of our general town code, only taxpayers and residents of the town are permitted to speak during public session. I've been in contact with with the gentleman during this meeting to confirm that he's neither a resident nor a taxpayer. So I would ask, Mayor, that you don't recognize him to speak at this time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Anyone else besides Mr. O'Connor? I don't see anybody yet. Let's give it another few seconds.
Tom, can you comment why we wouldn't let a resident speak? I mean, we've always let residents speak outside of town.
Well, our town code is very specific as to who can speak on matters under the council's jurisdiction. And beyond that, I would say that he, based upon my conversation with him today, he wants to bring up extraneous matters that really aren't under this council's jurisdiction. So our ordinance is what it is. It provides only that taxpayers and residents may speak on matters of concern to this council. And I would be loath to have this gentleman turn public comment meeting into some type of a grandstanding circus.
Nobody else, Mayor, has raised their hand, so you can close the public portion.
So hearing none, I close this portion of the meeting and move to bills and claims. So Councilman Parmalee.
Thank you, Mary. I'd like to move bills and claims in the amount of $537,118.33.
Yeah, I have a second.
Second,
Any discussion? All in favor?
yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried. Next on the agenda is reports to standing committees, beginning with the Finance Policy Committee. Councilman Parmalee.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 4 resolutions that I'd like to move as a package. First one's a resolution authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to draw a warrant for unused parking permit fee. Second is a resolution authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to refund dumpster security payment. Third is a resolution authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to draw a warrant to Treasurer, State of New Jersey, for marriage civil union license fees. And the last is a resolution authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to sign biweekly warrants for the non-union library employee salaries effective January 1, 2021.
May I have a second?
Second,
Any discussion? All in favor?
yes.
Yes.
Opposed? This motion has carried. Next is the Public Safety Transportation Parking Committee. Councilman Dardia.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move General Ordinance number 2203 on first reading, an ordinance amending the Town of Westfield Bicycle Board.
May I have a second?
Second,
Second.
Any discussion? Councilman Dardia, do you want to talk a little bit about what this ordinance actually does?
Yeah, sure. This is an opportunity to amend the current ordinance in place to create a bicycle board, which up until I guess about the early 90s, this board was in effect, had about, I don't know, 7 or 8 members on it. And I think their chief responsibility was to like mete out punishment for biking infractions. So so the point of this amendment is to kind of change up the composition of the board and to add a liaison from the green team to be part of it. So that's our hope. This is a first reading. So hopefully by February, we'll have this in place.
Great. So please call the roll.
Councilwoman Habgood, Councilman Parmalee,
Yes.
Councilman LaGrippo,
Yes.
Councilman Katz. Councilman Katz,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mackey,
Yes.
Councilman Contract,
Yes.
Councilman Dardia,
Yes.
Councilman Boyce,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes, the motion has carried. Councilman Dardia, is there anything more you wanted to say?
Yeah,
public
a couple
safety?
things, that'd be great. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure.
Just regarding the Public Safety, Transportation and Parking Committee. So 2020, we had a productive year despite the pandemic conditions, and just a few things that I'd just like to share with everyone at this time. As you just heard, we're trying to reinvigorate the Bicycle Advisory Board. As I said, it was sort of like in a state of dormancy for a while, and we want to change that up, bring it back. Trying to add this amendment and change it so that it serves as a partner to the downtown and actually all around town when it comes to making biking safer and more accessible. Separately, in our last meeting, Chief Bataloro approved testing out the idea of having parking enforcement officers hand out warnings, not tickets or fines, but to anyone biking on the sidewalk downtown. So, these are designed to be fun warnings, designed mostly to educate that it's against the law to do this. And likewise, parking enforcement officers could also hand out warnings. Again, not tickets to kids under 17 who aren't wearing helmets while biking in town. Again, it's a fun warning. It's designed to be educational. We're also trying to increase the number of bike racks in the downtown because, hey, let's face it, some people just want to bike into town and not ride around so much. So we're trying to increase the number of bike racks. So next, this past Saturday, Jim Gilday and I met with residents to discuss a proposed plan to install a center island at Walnut Street and Lawrence Avenue. This was planned to be a temporary traffic intervention, which could become permanent after a trial period. And it's designed to address the numerous accidents that have occurred there in the last few years. Well, we received a lot of very helpful observations and feedback from the 11 or so residents that showed up. There are ideas for improving the intersection safety will certainly be taken into consideration. One of the recommendations was to address the speeding on Lawrence Avenue. So, of course, our first course of action will be to perform a speed study there on Lawrence Avenue between Kimball and Walnut. And speaking of speed studies, our efforts in 2020 will continue in terms of monitoring speeding in town. And so we have our speed box studies done mostly by our traffic sergeant, Sergeant Ostrander, to monitor speeding and put targeted enforcement in place when necessary. We have some upcoming locations, so folks look out for speed studies being done in Ward 2 on Kimball Ave, Ward 1 on Oak Tree Pass, Barchester Way, Ward 3 on Grandview, and again in Ward 3 on Sycamore. And lastly, very exciting, we have a road striping update. We have received approval finally from Union County for striping on county roads. For example, don't block the box striping at West Broad and Rawway intersection, and also at Lenox and Central Avenue intersection. They also approved a crosswalk at Florence and West Broad intersection. And so the town is going to hire a contractor to do the striping, and that about does it, Mayor. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilman. So next is.
We were supposed to look at Green and Central. You know what happened with that location?
I'm sorry, what was the location, Mark?
Sorry, Green and Central Avenue. That's a side street. We could talk offline, but that was one street the Public Safety Commission was supposed to look at.
I think we may have taken care of that, but let's talk offline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
So next is the Code Review and Town Property Committee, Councilman Parmalee.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move General Ordinance number 2204 on first reading, an ordinance amending the Historic Preservation Ordinance for the town of Westfield to permit expeditious review of minor work on designated properties in certain circumstances.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilwoman Habgood, Councilman Parmalee,
Yes.
Councilman LaGrepo,
Yes.
Councilman Katz, Councilwoman Mackey,
Yes.
Councilman Contract,
Yes.
Councilman Dardia,
Yes.
Councilman Boyce,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes. And so that's a wrap, everybody. Thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Night, bye.
Good night.